Sabah el khair. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Anita.
Good morning. Good to see you. So today we're just going to continue. I'm going to make some introductions. We have a presentation by one of our colleagues that is here with us, Stelina Chadzi Chisco, who is from the VET Vocational Training CEDEF-POP of the European Center. I will introduce her a little bit later. We have George Fadel, Duncan Chando, Asma, Anastasia Pavlova, the same team more or less. We're all here, and we are very happy to start the day, continuing about this learning course on skills anticipation. We are looking into how understanding the importance and main instruments for identifying the future skills, needs, and labor market imbalances in GCC countries, and also how the GCC countries can cooperate with each other, because this is, as I recall, a South-South and triangular cooperation series. So one could ask why we are interested in a South-South series on the European Center for Development Vocational Training, as Europe is not necessarily in the global South. But the idea is that this South-South and triangular cooperation also has, of course, the dimension of triangular cooperation. And as I had mentioned to you in earlier sessions, it means also South-South-North cooperation. So, of course, the cooperation with Europe and GCC is very much appreciated. And the understanding is that all parties can learn from each other, not only EU from GCC, but vice versa. We always have something to share. Even if it's sometimes modest, sometimes not, sometimes it's a big cooperation possibility. So we are interested in this sharing. So we will look into these reflections of anticipation systems, which for us is important to have the inherent sub-regional dimension of labor markets of the different countries of GCC. And in some sessions, we also will be later on comparing with BRICS countries and other countries, but this will be a little bit later on the 15th. We would still, this session, really look into acquired good understanding on the drivers of change. You had done a reflection on this, and I was rereading what you had. I actually was listening to the recording of what you had said last time. And you had really some interesting points. I was there with you, but it's always good to refresh the memory on some of the drivers of change, like innovation, climate change, important just transitions, technological, digital, economical, and prices, for example, of oil, or fluctuations on economic situations. So this would push change, within the GCC countries. And then there was some looks into way forward, and one interesting one, apart for some countries that offered funding that we were very, of course, excited about, but also the question of having a common joint platform on GCC on skills. So this is something that maybe through ITC Turin we can help facilitate. If you have your own platform, I think some of it already exists, then we can just, instead of doing the facilitation, just support giving the proper visibility, so that's a possibility that we like to do. And there was also discussions on some of the objectives, beneficiaries, target groups for the skills, and this was mainly coming from the presentation of George Fadel, who is here with us today. He might want to add 1 minute to what I'm saying. And we would like to also increase the cooperation with GCC on the fields of skills development. So I always am recalling this because this is very important. We also like to say that, the importance of triangular cooperation is also very critical for us. And that is why we have here with us Stelina. So now I introduce her correctly. Stelina is an expert of the Department for VET and Skills at CEDEF-PONO, which is the Center for Development and Vocational Training. I will also send you the little extract in the chat. And she's leading this department's research on job skills and green transitions, which is a very important topic for the ILO, as you know, because that just green transitions is one of the priorities of our new Director General, Gilbert Humboldt. and sectoral skills development. She coordinates the skills trends intelligence team and contributes to the Center on Skills Anticipation and Governance. Before joining SEDEPO, she worked as almost a decade in the private sector as a researcher and policy analyst. So as you can see, of course, Stelina's expertise is exactly within the realm of what we are going to discuss today, with this very important twist that is continuating as well from the discussion last time with George on the green economy and green jobs and transitions, but also the whole question of skills anticipation. So we're very excited to have Stelina with us. And I'm just going to pass the floor to George for 1 minute in case he wants to add something before Stelina, I give you the floor. So George, please, if you have any additions on reflections on last time around, it's also interesting for Stelina to hear what we discussed.
Okay, thank you, Anita. I think what I can say after you, I don't know. You explained very well. Anyway, I welcome all participants with us on board. We welcome all. We would like to thank Stelina, and we welcome her on board with us also. Stelina will present and share with us her expertise and anticipation skills for greener economy.
Thank you so much. Oh, sorry, you wanted to say something else?
No. Here I just want to say, I reconfirm on the cooperation between South-South Global and the South-South Triangular Cooperation to be able to practice the peer learning between countries. Our session today is to focus on the skills greeners based on the experience that we may share Stelina with us, based on the first session list about climate change and global drivers. So we hope that the speakers later will cooperate to share the experience between the countries and between the triangular cooperation to be able to practice the peer learning. Till now, I don't want to add anything. I prefer to Stelina to start her presentation, and later on, if anybody has a question, we may ask in the chat box or directly. Please. We are focusing to share all experience with Stelina today. Okay, please, Stelina, the floor is yours. You can start.
Thank you, and over to Stelina.
Thank you very much. Good morning from me as well. It's a wonderful opportunity to share our work with the audience that we are not usually invited to speak to, so it's a great opportunity. I hope that some of the findings and the suggestions stemming from our work will be useful to you and the participants. I'm going to share my presentation. Kindly note that it's not possible for me to view at the same time any questions in the chat. So if you want to pose any questions in the chat, please allow me to take them on board later.
Yes, and we can, Stelina, what we can do as well to help you is like after a few slides, as you have a lot of slides, we can also make a little break in the middle and look at the questions. So don't worry about that. We can help you with that. Over.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So I assume that participants don't know what SEDEFOP is. It's an agency of the European Union that is situated in Greece, in Thessaloniki. And the work, it focuses on understanding skills and trends in the labor market, and in order to reflect on the policies, the correct policies for vocational education and training across the member states of the European Union. And as vocational education and training, we perceive what can be called as initial vocational education and training, which mainly concerns younger people before they enter the labor market, and what can be called continuous vocational education and training, or professional training, it's called in some countries, which means any type of training, upskilling, like getting higher skills, or retraining people maybe that are unemployed and they want to enter a different occupation. And it can concern all types of professions, all types of occupations. So what we do in SEDEFOP, through our research and analysis of policies, we aim at supporting the European Commission in designing and promoting policies on vocational education and training, or let's call it VET for being shorter, always with the goal to support EU member states. In our work, we are supported by having very frequent collaboration and communication with stakeholders, such as social partners, and it can be employers or employee organizations or trade unions in some countries, in order to better understand what are the needs. In the European Union, the environmental topics had been in the policy agenda, but not that high. This changed in 3 years ago, actually in December 2019, when the European Commission adopted the European Green Deal. And the European Green Deal is considered the growth strategy of the European Union. So it's not anymore something that we need to take into consideration in parallel to other policy goals. It is the most important goal, and other policies should be adapted or take into consideration the specific goals of the European Green Deal. As you can see, this is, let's say, the infographic, the formal infographic depicting the various areas that policy areas that the European Green Deal touches upon. It goes from energy to building, to agri-food with farm and fork, etc. So it touches upon a wide range of policies and policy areas. The European Green Deal does set some goals, gives some directions, and is supported since 2019 by more specific policies and activities, policy activities that have been initiated at the European Union level, but also, of course, at the member states level, in order to provide more specific guidance on how to make the European Green Deal happen. What is an important aspect of this green transition that the European Green Deal introduces is the fact that it's highlighted that the transition to a new, to the goals, to the greener economy and the greener society, is that it should be a just transition. And this is also an element that has been highlighted by the ILO for some years now. So it is also important to make sure that the policies that support the achievement of the European Green Deal goals take into consideration the ways that vulnerable groups, it can be migrants in some countries, it can be women in some countries, it can be also people that are low skilled or in occupations that will be negatively affected by the transition. We're going to discuss about this in a while, that they are ensured, they are provided with the training, they are provided with the opportunities, they are provided with, for example, the knowledge, the awareness on how to better make the transition for them. So it's both an economic aspect and a social aspect that needs to be taken into consideration. In SEDEFOP, we had been exploring the implications of environmental policies on the labor market for quite some time, over a decade now. But of course, after the adoption of the European Green Deal, this is the EGD abbreviation in my slides, we focus on understanding how the adoption of the European Green Deal affects the labor market and affects skills and therefore training, and at the same time the other way around, how we can make sure that our societies, our economies have the right skills, have the right level of awareness in order to reach the European Green Deal. So what we saw, and I will share with you from our research so far, and we see it because it's evolving all the time, is that it's not just some change that affects some specific sector or one country only or an occupation only. No, it's a change, a radical, a profound change that affects all sectors, all occupations. And therefore, the implications are very, very important for vocational education and training. And it's not only about the what to train on, is how to attract people, how to design the trainings, how to ensure that there is guidance in schools, in later on in vocational education and training for the adults, in employed people, etc. It's such an important shift that we need to take into consideration, as I will share later, that we need to achieve some goals relatively quickly, but at the same time, we are talking about a new paradigm, a new way of doing things at the economic and social activities level. If you don't mind, I thought about understanding a bit your views and putting them in this in the presentation. If you could go to slido.com, if someone can share the link from the team, the link in the chat to make it easier, and you put green anticipation in the in Slido. I would appreciate if you could provide your answers to this question, whether in your view anticipating skills for the green transition is possible and easy, it is possible but challenging, or it is not possible at all. Because this will be, in my view, the main aspect that we will discuss today through my presentation, to understand what it takes for anticipating skills for the green transition. And what we mean by anticipation of skills, it's a way to understand which skills will be important for the future, which type of skills and who is important to involve, and how to train the people for these particular skills. So I see one response. I'm going to leave some seconds if somebody else also wants to reply. If you have any problem accessing it, can you please share in the chat? Okay, so the response says it is possible but challenging. I would personally agree, and it's good that we don't think that it is impossible, because then it can be a hurdle for policy making. So it is possible but challenging, true. What we do instead of to overcome these challenges is to have a holistic, if I may say, approach to the tools and methods that we can use, because understanding what needs to be done, to put it bluntly, demands definitely a variety of information and data. It is not possible to understand particularly the green transition, because it's a very big change. It demands a technological advances. It demands a new way for, let's say, of producing. It guides the discussion to, for example, alternative sources of energy. This is significant change for the labor market. It is not possible to find the complete information in just only one data source. So what we do, we combine outputs from, for example, our skills forecast that we run. The links will be available in the presentation that I will share with the audience. A skills forecast, for those that are not familiar with, it's It's based on an econometric model. It's the type of exercise that maybe you have read, like it is foreseen that, let's say, GDP will be increased by 2% and unemployment will rise by 3%. It's the same type, let's say, of rationale and how to build an econometric model, but it focuses on understanding skills and labor market. So how will employment growth develop in sectors and in occupations? Will we need more highly skilled people or more low skilled people? We also wanted to understand what will take place at sectoral level, because it is important in order to anticipate skills for the green economy to see what is going on at the overall, if let's say, national level. It's very informative. But in order to make policies and design policy activities that actually target those that are in need and help employers and help also employees, it is important to see what is going on at the lower level, at, say, for example, the sectoral level. In order to do so, we run a skills foresight, which is another type of tool for skills anticipation. It is based on forming scenarios. So what if this happens? How would our labor market react? What if another thing happens at the same time, etc., etc.? There are some methodologies under foresight that one can use in order to possibly explore the way that the particular sector or even the wider economy can and should respond. And this is what we did, accumulating knowledge from experts, sectoral experts, and we have some very interesting insights that I can share already. Our focus has been on smart and green cities, because even in very small countries, it is true that the cities are accumulating the majority of people living there, and change regarding the green transition starts at the local level. We also focused on waste management, which is one of the pinnacles of the green transition, and it's already augmenting technologically. It's way much more than garbage, let's say, collectors or processors. Agri-food, agriculture, and food industry that we are now developing the report for the final results, and circular economy, which will be published next year. We also benefit from a very unique tool. We call it Skills Ovate, and what it does, it identifies skills that employment post on online job advertisements. This is what OJA means in my presentation. So it is a way to understand what do employers ask for in order to see what if there are trends, if there are new skills that are emerging, and if and how then we could inform the vocational education and training area, the trainers, the companies, the schools to prepare for these skills. So as you can see, there is a variety of data and information that we collect, and we try to meaningfully blend. We call it skills intelligence because it's not only one type of data and information, and it's not only just to put them together. We try to see what the combination of the information tell us. Again, because this is such a significant change, a profound change that takes place at the same time with digitalization and automation, change in the value chains, continuous impact on, let's say, supply chains from the COVID restrictions. For some countries, especially here in Europe, there are migration flows that countries try to see how to best deal with them and how to benefit the local economies, but also support migrants, etc. So there are many other policy and social aspects that need to be taken to be taken into consideration. This is why we need to have a variety of methods and tools. For understanding specifically the green transition, last year we ran a dedicated forecast scenario. So we said, hypothetically, if we were to achieve the goals of the European Green Deal, what would happen in the labor market to see what's going on. I'm not going to disturb you now with the numbers because a forecast is mainly to be used to show the direction, not the specific, let's say, numbers. But what is important is that we saw that a green transition would mean more employment for the European Union, but it wouldn't mean more employment for all sectors. There are some sectors that were foreseen to be more negatively affected, such were the industries for coke and refined petroleum, gas and steam, and mining and quarrying. At the same time, I need to highlight that the scenario was designed and we ran it before the war in Ukraine and the energy crisis that has hit Europe. I'm sure everybody has read or heard about it. And this has shifted the discussion of how to deal with energy sources and how to, let's say, try to find solutions in the short term now in Europe about the energy crisis, which possibly has implications, particularly for the coal industry. What is important to see, however, is that there are some sectors that are expected to be more significant than others. So we expect that more people will be demanded. For example, waste management and water supply, construction, because making, renovating buildings, putting, let's say, sustainability in construction and material, etc., is one of the main pillars of the European policy, as well as we see some expected increases in employment indirectly, for example, in legal and accounting and consulting industries, which means that the new regulations and the increasing developments at the very small level, sectoral level, subsectoral level in the supply chain, demand, for example, for specialized lawyers, demand for change in the way accounting is being reported. There is a huge policy initiative concerning sustainable finance, and which activities now that, in order to be funded by the European Union and in some cases by some government funds, they need to fulfill specific criteria in terms of sustainability. We see an increase in the computer programming services, which means that the digital transition and the green transition do go hand in hand, so we can safely talk about the twin transition, as we call it at the EU level. This means that there is need to understand the skills, anticipate the skills, and design the right policy activities for all workers. But we need to adjust it to each sector, sometimes in specific occupations, and at the same time, it has to be, it is relevant to each country or even each region in some areas. For example, I'm going to provide with European Union examples. In Greece, there is a significant level of tourism in the national GDP. The southern areas of the country that are much sunnier, let's say, than the north of Europe, do have greater interest in training their people that are working in tourism, in making hotel buildings more sustainable, etc. At the other end, there are regions in, for example, Poland, that are very much focusing on coal mining. The needs, the training needs, and the policy needs, and the discussion about what will be the change in the labor market, what should be the skills we should focus on. You understand they're very, very different between the two regions. Regarding occupations, we saw again that some of them are expected to be more important than others, but building on the results of the forecast and other analysis, we attempted a sort of categorization between occupations in terms of the type of focus they would need from policies for training. So we highlight that all occupations would need to be trained in order to understand that sustainability and the green transition, they are not just one box to tick. It has to be a new way of doing things for energy saving, for protecting ourselves more from the climate change, for ensuring that future generations are also trained in these new habits now. So it's some type of raising awareness and training has to be done across occupations and even citizens, regardless of if and where they work. There are some occupations that we can call them key, crucial ones. Let's say technicians and engineers that work for electrical vehicles, or to install solar panels or design more sustainable practices in a manufacturing plant, etc. The training in these cases have to be decided and dealt with at the very specific level, most of the times at the industry level, because sometimes, let's say, that the practices for a manufacturing plant that develops batteries are different from a manufacturing plant that's works, for example, with fertilizers. But again, the overall idea would be to understand what are the specific skills necessary from technology, from the labor market, from regulation, and then adapt it at the level of providing the design. And at the same time, we saw that there are some occupations mostly linked to research and developments, or to very specialized occupations that do, for example, in agriculture, innovations like aquaponics or hydroponics, where you can find ways of, let's say, developing plants in areas where there is not much water, or the soil is not beneficial, etc. These may be occupations with a very, very small share in the labor market. And understandably, the policymakers and stakeholders, they are most of the times focusing on the occupations that are very important in the labor market. So they affect a significant share of the people. This is understandable, but at the same time, we saw these occupations that be very, very small in the labor market. But if we don't have these people, then technological change cannot happen, or it will have to happen very, very slowly. And maybe to some extent, we don't have that time, because we are also trying to grapple the effects of climate change. So we call these occupations thyroid, like the thyroid gland that people have. They're small, but if they're not working well, nothing works. So we highlight the need to also take into consideration such occupations and such knowledge that can actually drive innovation and drive, let's say, improvements in specific sectors, particularly regarding areas such as I said, in agriculture and food, in raw materials, in energy, in automotive, transport, etc. Just very quickly to say that we also saw that attaining the European Green Deal goals, or overall the green transition, if you want to say, it is expected to provide the training positions for all types of occupations in terms of skills. Let's say its level of qualifications here, how it's used. But what is important to see is that there is an expected increase for highly skilled people that will be non-manual occupations. So in many aspects, we would need more specialized people. But at the same time, it's important to highlight that we will need more skilled manual occupations. So there's expected significant benefits for employment for medium skilled occupations, what we call in Europe more traditional vocational occupations. And as you can see in the examples provided, again, we believe that this is an important message for policymaking. The results also highlight the potential transitions of people from some sectors or occupations that are expected to be more negatively affected. For example, from the opposite, let's say, of green, we call it brown. I don't know if you use it also in your countries, like from sectors that are more brown, that are more polluting, to sectors, to occupations that will see greater employment boost. There will be more employment opportunities because they are greener, because they will advance more the green transition. And again, this is an important message for our policymakers and our social partners, for employers, for trade unions, for other organizations that deal with policies and training initiatives, because it will affect the way that we need to treat people and the skill profiles demanded in each area. So maybe it is important to see, depending on the country, depending on the strong sectors, let's say, that if we need more people in construction and less people will be employed in the coal mines, how possibly maybe we can get the people that will lose their job in gaining the skills to be absorbed in another sector. Regarding the sectoral approach, as I said, you can already find the two policy briefs on cities in transition and waste management in the links that I will share. And the next two policy briefs will be out in 2023, along with a synthesis report. We identified through the experts an array of new occupations, emerging occupations, or occupations that exist already, but they will need new skills that are important for each type of analysis, for each type of sector. What we already see as common grounds between all four sectors that we have worked on so far is that there are significant skills that are very specific to the sector and to an occupation in the sector, but at the same time, all experts in all four sectors highlighted that it is important to also have soft skills such as communication, such as teamwork, such as understanding the needs of others. Again, the green transition highlights, as I said, that we cannot operate in silos. It cannot be effective change when only one organization takes the decision, or there is no possibility of employees to communicate. The skills that are relevant to research and development and also entrepreneurship, because there are many startups that have new ideas, that have innovation, or there are people in big organizations that can have a new idea, that can propose a new way of doing a process more sustainably. This is very important. In terms of organization and collaboration, to, let's say, move to the second part of my presentation, it's important to say that having training that has a lot of work-based learning in it, so on the job, tangible training, not only theory, was highlighted as important. Apprenticeships, which is a form of training that people are at the school and at the training at the same time, was very much appreciated. But again, let me highlight this to you. People said that we need to have trusted skills intelligence, so to have information, to have data on what is going on where we want to go, on what we need to take into consideration for the future, and not only to have this information, but ensure that this information is used in policy making. So because there's two steps at that for skills anticipation. The one is to have the methods and the tools, so you get the results. And the other is to have the people that are trained, that that they can understand the results and put them in policy making. So when there is a decision to be taken by the government, by a local authority, by an employer, or by an employee association, depends on how things are arranged in each country, that these people have access to the information and can make decisions on where to invest their financial budgets or their people and their time, which are very important decisions to be made. Very quickly for agri-food, that it's not out yet. Again, you can see more or less the same needs. What I would like to highlight, I don't know if it's relevant to your countries, but in the to-dos, we saw that the importance to make some occupations or even the sector more attractive to the youth. Through our discussions, we see that there are some jobs relevant, important to the green transition that are not so attractive to employers, to employees, or to young people to follow them, maybe because they have misconceptions of what the job is about, particularly for, let's say, agriculture or waste management, or because the conditions, let's say, the payments are not that high as in other sectors, and we may end up in a situation where there are job positions to fill in, but there's not sufficient number of people to respond to that. In order to achieve all that, it's important to have teachers and trainers. It's not part of this of the anticipation methods and tools per se, but I thought it would be interesting also to mention. At SEDEFOP, we also work on this field. We have a dedicated team that explores the different aspects of vocational and training teachers and trainers. And in a very recent publication that I shared the link to, it was explored how countries react, what countries are doing in an array of areas, one of them green skills and sustainability. And what was identified that there are already some initiatives quite informative and quite inspirational in my view in some countries, ranging from having specific programs and qualifications for teachers and trainers, to providing them with tools, but also to have networks that they can discuss, that they can cooperate, that they can exchange. Again, but you can see by the number of countries that there is a lot to cover, a lot of ground to cover, granted that the EU members are 27. There are some countries that show a greater, responsiveness to that. You can find more examples and more information in the report, but it is an element that I wanted to highlight. So building on all that, our questions were, what is the role of vocational education and training? How can we provide support and guidance to the countries? And we ended up at this notion of the sprint and the marathon. It was my idea, Greeks, we have a tendency of using Greek words here and there. So the one thing was that we understood we need to respond to some things very fast, because the green transition is already happening. There is already regulation that countries need to respond to, and employers need to respond to. So people need to be trained. There is new raw material, for example. There are new processes. There is research about electrical vehicles, about hydrogen, etc. So we need to make sure. We need to find ways actually in how to respond to the change in the short term. So VET has to run a sprint quite fast, reach a goal in order to accompany the change. However, at the same time, exactly because the green transition, as I said since the beginning, is not just to say, okay, we reached this goal, this is 12% and this is 15%. No, it's a shift. It's a change of how we do things and how we perceive things across industries and in the society as well, because it's important to have consumers that understand why it's important to choose a more sustainable product, why this new regulation is important. So to also practice it in a way. And this is a more long-term goal. This is a marathon that we need to chase. This is a way, this is a need for all relevant policies and all relevant stakeholders to keep collaborating and discussing through trusted partnerships in how to deal with a long-term goal and how to ensure that we continuously improve ourselves and continuously find ways to have a greener economy and a greener society. And this is how also vocational education and training could trigger the change through exchange, through innovation, through making things easier for employers and making things easier for employees in order to make the green transition happen. I know that many times people ask, but what are these skills for the green transition? You tell us to anticipate, you tell us to measure it, but how can we do it? There are several definitions and approaches around. I just want to share the latest one that has been formed under the discussion of an international working group where SEDEFOP, but also the ILO sit in. You can see the relevant organizations at the left. And so what is important here to highlight is that what we call as skills is both something that you can do, to put it very simply, but also it's the values, it's the attitudes, it's what you consider important and how you perceive the need to build something new, to make it green, to see better ways of producing food when there's not going to be that much water, for example, etc., etc. And it's both skills that are more on the job, more technical, if I may say, and more job specific, but there's also transversal. So it has to do with all types of occupations and all types of levels. So it affects the manager and it affects the lower worker. And this is an important message in order to highlight how it's important to train everyone, but in a different way. Now, in order building on all that, I would like to just take your quick views on how could effective skills anticipation be realized? Is it the collaboration of course, at least two of the offered options? Is it a collaboration between the government authorities and employers? It could be with employers and organizations or research institutions and academia, or all of the above. I'm afraid there's an issue with people accessing it. I don't see much. Oh, I see more all of the above. I'm going to leave some seconds if anyone wants also to do that. But okay, doesn't matter. We were not making statistics here anyway. It's just to see a bit the views and get the gist. I'm very happy about these responses because indeed we believe is all of the above, or even more stakeholders. Depends on the country, depends on the sectors. Just to give you an idea that when we are discussing about initial vocational education that usually regards very young learners, the parents in some cases are very important stakeholders because it is the parents that affect the decision of their children of whether they will go to a vet school and become electricians with a specialization later on, let's say solar panels, or not. So it really depends on the matter. CEDEFOP has been working on what are the necessary, let's say, conditions, which are the important factors in order to have what we call a skills governance. So the skills anticipation is how to understand which skills are important, which jobs will be driven more, it will be high skilled, low skilled, etc. But this is part of the story, as we said. It has to be fed into policy making. It has to be fed into discussion of stakeholders. It has to be translated into policy messages. It's not only numbers. It has to be ensured that this stays as a practice. It's not that, today we run a very high profile tool and we get the results and then nothing else happens next year, in 2 years, in 3 years. So some years ago, we started very vigorously this project, this research work, and we developed, as you can see here, this framework. In the link that I provide, you can find a very detailed analysis with a number of factors and a big number of descriptors that can guide you possibly and inspire you in, if you want to adjust it to your specific economy, or to your specific sector. What is important for me at this level to highlight is that, as you can see, it is a framework that reflects cooperation and collaboration. There is not only one organization or type of organization that can provide sufficient and full responses to all of that, or even manage completely all of that. So stakeholders is one of the 3 pillars. It's the collaboration, even a tripartite one. We are based on that in CEDEFOP, between the government, the employers, and the employee organization. It can be other type of collaborations that can support that, depends on the country. But if there is no stakeholder collaboration, then I would say that the other pillars cannot really develop. And it's important to ensure that, and highlight, that there is the framework that can be inspiring. But as you can see, it has this, let's say, external factors that would would really identify the if and what could be exactly included in the specific framework, or what should be prioritized, because the history of a country or of a sector or of a region depends, is important. The culture is important. Who can be involved and how? Who should be the lead? Who should fund? The demography should be reflected. The economy for sure, because as with the example I gave earlier from, let's say, southern Greece to northern Sweden, there's different priorities and different sectors. So there is not one solution that matches everyone, but definitely it can be inspiring as a framework. So very quickly, what we did, what we have started, we had for EU member states that asked for CEDEFOP support, and we identified, first of all, priority areas. It was for Bulgaria, Slovakia, Estonia, and Greece. And very quickly, what is important for me here is to see how different it was, because it's different countries, although they're all EU, we share some, we share common legislation, we share some common goals, but again, it's a different background, it's a different history, it's a different priority setting. The key challenges, I think, can also be informative, because there can be...
without wanting to cut you, we will have some group work, so maybe you have another 5 minutes to wrap up. Would that be okay?
I am finishing now. It's
okay, fantastic.
So it can be for the coordination on how to coordinate with stakeholders and etc. It can be methodological. So what it's important here to say that, you know, there's also need for specialized people to design and run such exercises and translate these exercises. It is not necessarily can be done by everyone, but of course, everything has to be policy relevant. So it's not an idea that has no links to the actual needs, the economic or even social needs of a specific country or a specific sector. It is important to take into consideration that also that the skills intelligence is part of a skills governance. It's the core of a cell, if I managed to do correctly this graph. And besides the integration of multiple stakeholders and the different parts of education and training, it's also important to keep in consideration the links with other policies. So instead of we focus on vocational education policies, but definitely specific labor market policy initiatives like active labor market policies that support, for example, the unemployed, the migration policies, other climate policies, they need to be taken into consideration. And ideally, the representatives, let's say, of ministries, the relevant ministries or relevant organizations are put together. In the links here, you can find practical guides that CEDEFOP has developed on how to do skills anticipation at the national level, at the sectoral level, how to do, let's say, graduate track surveys, specific tools that you can find interesting. And we have some for ones on new methods that also explore how skills anticipation can build on technological innovation and big data that are continuously being used across the spectrum. I think we have already highlighted that. So thank you very much. I'm sorry if I took more time than necessary. I hope you found this interesting and relevant, because although it's different areas, different regions, I believe that there can be common challenges and common learning points for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Stelina. No, it was excellent. You definitely did not take too much time. It was really foreseen as a keynote, so it was an excellent keynote. I think we'll get inspiration from some of the things that you mentioned, both on the technical and the transversal learning aspects you said, on the whole question of clean energy, Green Deal, zero pollution. I mean, there's so many interesting things there for us in the ILO, and also people working with the ILO, the partners here from GCC. So now we're going to move to group work, and I'll give the floor to Duncan to explain the 2 questions that we're going to do. And I think we'll do it really 10 minutes only, because we'll have to report back and we don't have too much time. It's a small group, but we'll still be divided into small groups in 10 minutes. So over to you, Duncan.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Anita. So for our group work, there are 2 questions that I've posted on the group. I think based on the presentation, a very elaborate presentation on this key topic on the issues of skills for green economies, we wanted also to look at two questions, which talks about examples or good practices in terms of green skills, and also opportunities for SSTC collaboration within GCC. And then question number two, also to look at some of the challenges as we look for issues around peer learning. So these two questions will guide our discussion for the next 10 minutes as we look at these issues and also looking at opportunities for SSTC collaboration. So I think over to Asma to break us into two groups for these questions. And then after that, I think we'll have a plenary. So let us make our discussion a bit to the point. We can get three opportunities or good practices, and also look at also three challenges, and then we'll present during the plenary. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Duncan. Over to you, Asma.
Okay, the rooms are ready, and now we are let them in. Everyone.
Selina, you're welcome to join room if you want. Huh? Sometimes there's translation, sometimes there's not. Hello, everybody.
Okay,
We have translation, right?
come back.
Yes, just to say that we had a very lively discussion, and I think there were still some comments going on, but we have a rapporteur from our group with Shaima. I don't know if the second group has also a rapporteur. So maybe we can give already the floor. I don't see her. Yes, I see her now. Shaima, you can report a little bit on the discussion that happened in our group.
Sure. So good afternoon, everyone. Bahrain timing. In my group, there was a fruitful discussion about the green economy and the use of different skills and the creation of jobs in this area. So we had a participant, Ms. Fatima from UAE, who shared with us a great project currently being implemented in UAE, which is UAE Green Job Program, in which she clarified that this program focuses on the on the skills which is required for a green economy in sectors such as waste management, energy, financial sector, retail, and wholesale sector, other general services sectors. And they are also focusing on creating jobs that require the use of these skills. We also have a brother Ibrahim from Saudi, who shared with us one of the initiatives that happens in the Saudi Arabia based on the economic vision 2030 that focuses again on the industrial sector and the use of energy and how to save energy or use it in a different way to convert the economy to be more greener. I think there was also another participation that talked about a new city that's being developed in Saudi that is relied basically on technology and the energy. They rely on technology and energy development, again, in order to support the green economy. And last but not least, also the work with the ILO on a project in Jordan, which is G20TS, I guess, that focuses on the use of technology and also the move to the use of smartphones application in the labor market. So these were basically the initiative and examples from different countries regarding the process that's being followed in order to move toward the greener economy. And thank you all.
Excellent, Shaima. That really represents well our discussion. And also thanks to interpreter that was helping Nancy and myself. And thanks to Google Translate for all the text that we wrote on the chat. Now over to George and Duncan, just to see, tell us a little bit who will be reporting back from your group, and maybe add some comments over there.
Yeah, from our group, only Munira from Oman said she spoke about the challenges and opportunities about that challenges. She said there are lack of data sources in the labor market, lack of coordination and correlation between maybe the stakeholders, but and the opportunities, the human resources are creative and rich in skills, but maybe they need to reskills and up skills and put a national or regional studies between the countries to be able to set policies to move to the greener economy. They know that in the GCC countries, they have a lot of opportunities and investment in the greener economy and the empowerment system and like this. So that what Monira said about the case in our group. I don't know if Duncan may add something else. I don't know.
Yes, Duncan, please go ahead, or Munira herself, of course, feel free. Duncan?
I think he did make the summary. That was following from the back because it was more in Arabic, but it's okay. I think there's no addition from my end.
Okay, and what about Munira? Would you like to tell the entire group a little bit on your experience?
Okay, well, I have said what I want to say. I summarize it through my experience in the labor market at the Sultanate. And
you can speak in Arabic because there's interpretation if you prefer.
Yeah, okay. I'm okay in English. If it is not clear, it's okay. I will speak in Arabic.
Yes.
طبعا في هنا في سلطنة عمان عندنا شيء
Here in Oman, there are multiple initiatives for the transformation for the green economy and skills, upskills. There's that vision to improve these initiatives and the mechanism to interrelate them with the anticipation of skills by coordinating with the GCC's countries as well as other countries in worldwide. We benefit from the Saudi and the UAE and the Qatari experience, but we aspire for more to overcome the challenges regarding the human resources, lack of information and data, and the unmatching for the technology as well. Also having databases that covers big data in order to be able to satisfy the current need, and to anticipate, to have a foresight for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think now I can pass to the closing, unless George, you want to say something. I have just a few words on closing. Over to you, George.
No, I just want to say I don't know if Serena is still with us or she left.
I think she left.
Yeah, anyway, I hope that her expertise and the EU is very good for us today. I hope and I reconfirm about the cooperation between the GCC countries later and the peer learning to be able to start and increase the skills and green economy, to be able in this country to set the relation and cooperation between all stakeholders, starting the governmental authorities and to private sectors and all stakeholders that related to the labor market to put policies to be able to start the greener economy and to define the necessity needs and steps to move on. ILO and ITC is always ready to help in any project in the future to be able to move or to share the experience to these countries. I hope today everything is clear from my side. I don't want to add anything. It's up to you or Shando to add anything else, Anita.
Thank you. I just wanted to share with you like 2-3 slides as a closing, because I was looking at some interlinkages of that we had done in terms of climate change, just transitions, and South-South cooperation. And I noticed that through today, we managed to have this, I'm not putting the full slide mode because I'm having a little bug on, so I apologize for that. That there's some information sharing on joint regional initiatives, GCC. We are trying to engage stakeholders on these modalities for peer learning. And we would like to reaffirm these concepts, both on terms of the greener economy, climate change, and everything that was discussed here about the Green Deal, for example, in the European Union. It could be also through triangular cooperation used for the GCC. Now, for my next slide, it's just a few, just in closing. It's very important to see the linkage between, the big policy agendas. There's the Paris Agreement in 2015. Recently, again, we had the COP27 that reaffirmed the importance, and the ILO was very present there, of linking green jobs, decent work to the climate agenda. The action on climate change is very important in terms of just transition and decent jobs and skills. So for the ILO, there are some very key areas, and that's what we heard: employment-intensive programs, skills development, and skills anticipation, and green entrepreneurship. So I think some inspiration could be taken from the EU example, but this can also be done in terms of South-South, social protection, and fair transitions in labor markets. And then I think there's interesting examples, including the one that Anastasia mentioned from G20, but also in Africa and Latin America, so we can compare among regions. And just to close, I think it's important to see that there is a importance of social dialogue, and that just transitions also has a role in South-South cooperation, because it's through this peer learning that you can have some platforms for the climate action 13, but also linking it up to SDG 8, which is of course the ILO SDG, which has skills development as something important. Green jobs and their impact on the greening of the economy, the question of pollution, digitalization, using also technology can lead us to greener economies. And South-South is a broad framework that you can use for this political, economic, social, cultural contribution. So I hope that, with this workshop, you'll be inspired to do some of this work through South-South. Some other important parts of the linkages with South-South cooperation is that the ILO believes in a response to this global environmental challenges, and I would even say crisis, right? If you heard the Secretary General Guterres mention that we are really at the dire strait. There's importance to do partnerships. Here I put the example of PAGE, which is a particular partnerships with several UN agencies on the environment. But I think I think what would be very good from this workshop on is the key people who are here establish an ongoing partnership on the elements of green. So some of the questions that we do this is through, as we had the exercise in module A, you remember, we have all these good practices, which we have compiled, and I think we'll share with you. We have a mega Excel sheet with all your responses because you were very proactive. And many of them had something to do with greening the economy and skills development. And how do you look into these practices? By looking into their dimensions of horizontality, meaning what you can share among yourselves. Triangular is what we did today with the EU, like if the traditional North can support the GCC countries. Innovation, so we talked a lot about innovation. There was talks about using the cell phones or using WhatsApp apps or any other technologies that would help us to become greener. the question of adaptability, because whatever you do in one country, maybe Bahrain or UAE, is not necessarily applicable to Oman. So the question of adapting also the whole skills anticipation discourse, and the sustainability. So I think having these points in mind, I think this PowerPoint is not in the in your platform, but I can adapt it a little bit and translate it to Arabic for it to become part of your package that comes with the course, if you're interested, because I think it's just a way of thinking and of systematically sharing good practices among yourselves. So I think without further ado, we can close the session today. I'll give back the floor to Asma in case she has any technical additional announcement.
شكرا للمشاركين جميعا على حضوركم.
Thank you all for your participation today.
جورج، ستالينا، دونكان،
George, Stelina,
على تفاعلكم وإثراء الحوار.
everyone, and your
للمترجمين شريف ونهى.
effective participation for the interpreters, Sharif and Noha.
الويبينار القادم يوم الخميس.
And we will meet you next webinar on Thursday
على الساعة 9:30 صباحا.
at 9:30 a.m.
أيامكم جميعا.
And would love to see you all.
Shukram, Saiditi, Raisa. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. See you.
شكرا أسماء.
Thank you. Shukram.
Okay, thank you.
George.
Bye.
Bye.